please submit your questions in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen throughout the town hall. None of what we do could be possible without the amazing support from our sponsors. We are humbled and grateful by their contributions. During these unique times, we are curious about sentiment and how you feel within our entrepreneurial community. We would like to start by taking a poll to let us know how you're feeling about your business right now. How are you currently feeling? Fearful, anxious, surviving, or optimistic? Please let us know. It looks like optimistic wins for today. Amazing. We also are wondering, what type of entrepreneur are you? Are you an entrepreneur currently in business? Are you an aspiring entrepreneur? Or perhaps you hold another position in your company? Thank you all. It looks like entrepreneur wins out for today. I'll share those results. Perfect. And finally, what is keeping you up at night? Is it finance, sales, or marketing? Is it scaling, pivoting? Is it your team, or are you surviving right now? We would love to know. Please fill out this poll. It looks like sales is the winner. Everyone's kept up at night around sales. Very good to know. Thank you all for completing those. And without any further delay, please join me in giving a warm welcome to our speakers today, Barbara Weaver-Smith, Ray Weaver, and Meredith Elliott Powell. Thank you so much for joining us. Hi, Ray. Hi, Meredith.
Hello. How are you?
Thank you.
Hello.
We would love for you to take it away. Thank you all.
Great. I am going to begin. Each of us is going to speak for just a little bit. And the topic that I want to talk about is trends that are emerging post-pandemic. So, hang on 1 second here. Sorry about that. For some reason, my slides are not advancing. I apologize. There we go. So we have, as a society, struggled with some analogies and metaphors to understand what's happening to all of us now in post-pandemic world. We've looked at historical events, including the Spanish flu, and in some ways 9/11 has been a guide to some people. My argument is that this event is different really than anything we've seen historically. I think many of you would probably agree, but in what ways? One is that it's farther reaching than we've seen before, in large part because of the way our economy is structured. Our world is global. And second, the implications are surprising in ways that we can't always see. But the good news is that what's going to happen is evolutionary in ways that can be predicted, not entirely, but certainly in large part. And a different analogy, a different metaphor that I have turned to in helping understand what's going on, believe it or not, is the Soviet launch of the Sputnik missile during the height of the Cold War in 1957. This basically was the beginning of the space race, and it totally took the West by surprise entirely. There was a very large direct impact of this event. The satellite itself was was entirely benign. All it did was beep, but it terrified America and its Western allies and made all of them feel as though we were way behind in technology race, both politically and militarily. So there was a very large direct impact of this event in terms of enormous investment in space itself, and the near term kind of height of that, the apex of that was, of course, the moon landing in 1969 by the Americans. But what is less understood is the indirect impact. There was a science and technology revolution. You could see this in many, many ways. There was an enormous, enormous investment in research and development in universities and businesses, a whole giant industry of basic research, not just in satellites, not just in communications, but in all sorts of physical sciences, not just in military, behavioral sciences. That has lasted to this day. And you could see that in, for example, the scientists admitted to the National Academy of Sciences. You can look at the amount of money that is invested in research and development in American universities, and also in businesses all over the world. So that I think is the interesting thing that happened with Sputnik, and I think it's the interesting thing that's going to happen with COVID, is this indirect impact, which is less obvious in some ways, but more profound and longer lasting. Possibly the most important way, certainly a very important way in which this time is different, in which these indirect effects are going to manifest, is in behavior changes that are going to last long past the pandemic itself. And I show here 4 different categories. Number one is we've got all sorts of norms and habits that guide behavior every day. We're taking old ones and replacing them with new ones. Resources are being reallocated. So, for example, a lot of us spend a lot of money on travel right now. A lot of us are spending money on telecommunications from the home. Of course, there are new risks. There are personal risks. There are employer risks and liability, and there will be lots and lots of new regulatory requirements and restrictions. And with all these things, in many cases, the perception is more important than the reality. And that even if a minority of your customers or potential customers are concerned about things being different, that can have a profound effect. Craigslist, for example, only took 30% of newspapers' business when it wiped out classified ads, but that was enough to entirely decimate the entire model. So the good news is that this is going to give rise to some really important trends, and these trends are going to create opportunities. So what I want to do briefly is talk about 3 of those trends that we've identified in talking to business leaders like yourselves, in doing research, and just based on my own experience as an academic and an entrepreneur. The first of these is a war on pathogens. So we're seeing this being fought obviously now with respect to the coronavirus, but the argument I'll make is that this war is going to go well beyond the specific threat of COVID-19. There's going to be, and we're at the beginning stages of this now. Right now, the effort's obviously focused on the particular threat of the coronavirus, but there's going to be a vast effort to make the world less vulnerable to threats like this going forward. And in terms of the behavior of individuals, in terms of all sorts of institutions, psychologically, I think that germs are going to replace terrorism. What does that mean? That means that many individuals, certainly not all, are going to be preoccupied with airborne pathogens in general, to a degree and in a way that they were not before. And you'll see all these enormous investments that were made after 9/11 to keep us safer, most obviously in terms of air travel. You'll see similar investments across the board. The difference is that there were kind of hot points, touch points, where in terms of travel, in terms of military outposts and so forth, that were particularly vulnerable and particularly important to protect in terrorism. And here, unfortunately, as we all know, the danger is much more diffuse. It's of course centered in areas with high social density, but it's almost everywhere. So what are the implications of this war? There'll be lots and lots of demand for new technologies in interfaces and in sanitization. Unfortunately, I think that we as a society are going to be asked to trade off many of our whatever remains of our privacy and certain liberties in order to track pathogens. We might see travel restrictions. We're also going to see new class divisions. According to whether people can or must risk exposure. We're already seeing that certain people's livelihoods depend on being physically in a place, and they have to make that choice. But there are going to be other people emerge who are willing to, and are a certain age or certain health profile that they can more easily travel, or maybe their family situation. And class divisions are going to emerge as a response to that. The last one I'll talk about is there's a notion in social psychology of promotion mode and prevention mode. This might apply to an individual's predilection. So I might be a promotion-oriented person and you might be a prevention-oriented person, but it can also be manipulated. People can be put more in a mindset of promotion or prevention according to circumstance. And what that means is that when you're pursuing the same goal, you might have very different reasons and very different things might resonate for you when pursuing that goal. So let's say I have a goal to lose weight. If I'm in promotion mode, I want to lose weight to feel better. I want to lose weight to look better, things like that. If I'm in prevention mindset, I want to lose weight in order to make it less likely that I suffer from chronic diseases, might want to make it less likely that I have pains and injury, that sort of thing. I think I would argue that before the pandemic, that the dominant mindset, because the economy had been growing so nicely for a pretty long period of time, the dominant viewpoint was among consumers was a promotion mindset. And I think that now we're in prevention mindset, which means that prevention-oriented messaging is going to be much more persuasive for certain customers. That's the first trend. The second trend I want to talk about is what I call the home as Citadel. The home is going to reassert its dominant role in economic life. Of course, we're seeing that already. Many people are required to stay home during this time. But again, this is going to last much, much longer than the specific threat of coronavirus. And with respect to retail operations, you'll see many, many brick and mortar places that are refashioned for home delivery service. And finally, you'll see a home is a new form of status symbol and security. So, one area of the economy that is doing well and will continue to do well is home upgrades, furniture and furnishings, remodeling projects, home entertainment, and home offices as the new status symbol. I'm sure you've seen on many of your Zoom calls, people decked out with their new home offices. And we'll see investments in security and isolation where people can afford it. They'll invest in isolation from threats from the outside and noise. Again, we'll see some erosion of privacy and civil liberties, and that will drive people to kind of build up what they can control in the home. And be as free as they want within those confines. And finally, investments in privacy from visitors into our home, not just physical visitors, but virtual visitors, and even from other family members. We all have to work together to figure out how to get along in these constrained environments. And so consumers are going to be willing to buy products and services that deliver privacy from outsiders and from other family members. And the last trend I want to talk about is something I call the low density economy. The new luxury that I think that people are going to see is sparsity. So people can afford to be in a low dense environment, which is associated with a safer environment in a world of airborne pathogens, are going to spend money for that. One thing that is related to that, or correlated to that, is that proximity to cities, which has been very, very valuable, certainly among professionals in recent years, that becomes less valuable. You might see, and there's already plenty of evidence, some anecdotal evidence that certain urban centers are becoming less attractive and people are fleeing to ex-urban situations when they can. And you see, unfortunately, high density environments might become structurally unprofitable. What does this mean? This means that if you've got the kind of business that requires people to be in a high dense social environment, like some retail environments do, for a sustained amount of time, that might be very difficult to sustain a business like that in a way that's profitable. So what does this look like? What does a low density economy consist of? There is one aspect of this is avoidance of high density. We have been experimenting as a society with communal assets, like ride sharing services instead of owning vehicles. That's on hold. I think in the long run, it makes economic sense and technology is going to support that, but that's on hold. Leisure dollars, leisure activities, leisure time is going to seek lower density activities. And you'll see, certainly we have seen, but we'll see also on a go-forward basis, consumption peaks will smooth out. What that means is that people will invest in entering higher density social situations in less dense timeframes. So not always Friday and Saturday night. So it's going to smooth out to some degree. And you'll see tiers of services. Restaurants might develop scenarios where they offer private rooms to people who can afford them. If they can't afford them, they might invest in a home delivery experience that is not just the food. They're going to try to give some degree, some level of the kind of environment that you pay for when you go to a restaurant. We'll see service tiers in sports and entertainment venues, although those candidly they're in real trouble, and also in transportation. So, those just briefly are three of the trends that we see. And, for organizations to respond to this and to navigate this and to thrive, there's a lot of complexity and changes to not just business models, but interdependent changes up and down the line. Organizational changes, certainly changes to the way you sell and the way you deliver services. So what I encourage you to do, by way of summary, is to think big. What business are we in? How are we going to engage with our customers on a go-forward basis? How are we going to deliver and support our products and services? And what former opportunities are dying and what new ones can be developed? Thank you. That is it for me. And I'm going to hand it off.
Thanks, Ray. So let me get my slides up here. Okay, so Ray talked about he ended on the note of complexity. So what I'd like to talk about is some ways to manage that complexity going forward. Quite a few of you were kind enough to share some things that you hope to get out of this session today, which kind of fit in with what I'm planning to talk about. So I thought I'd put up here a few of the things you asked about: how to run on 50% of revenue, team building, pricing, new ways of working, how to make projections, and how to recalibrate for the new economic climate. Now, we don't propose to have all the answers or even any of the answers to that, but what I'm going to try to do is give you 3 models of how you might go about answering some of those questions for yourselves and dealing with the complexity. So we're working on team planning strategies and models, and the criteria I use to choose the ones to share with you today. I think for entrepreneurs, they need to be team-based and collaborative. They need to be fast to do. They need to be easy to use and easy to revise, because obviously in this environment, we have very moving targets. You're not going to be working on very many really long-term strategies right now. Now, when I talk about teams, I mean a team that can include not only you and your employees, but your advisors, your board members. You can involve customers on this team. You might have a consultant or more than one. If you have an SBA mentor or someone like that, they can participate. Members of your peer group, if you're in some kind of a group like a Vistage group or a Renaissance group or any kind of a mastermind, those are great people to involve. And you might have professionals that work with you that would be good at contributing, your banker, your attorney, your accountant, people that have special expertise that they can bring to the table. You might have other ideas for members of a team that are helping you to plan. So the first model I'd like to talk about is scenarios planning. Scenarios are stories, but there's a particularly good model for how to get to scenarios, starting with the forces that are driving change. I didn't invent this. I want to give you an illustration from my friend Langdon Morris, who heads up Innovation Labs in California. Now, I want to tell you that we put together a page on our website at thewhalehunters.com/NASDAQ. And Laurel is going to send you all an email after this session, which will have a connection to that web page, and all the references that I give will be on that page, along with some illustrations from these models as well. So don't worry about how to get in touch with these things afterwards. So I want to give you an example of a scenario. This is one that Langdon created, and this is looking at pairs of alternatives, or what give you scenarios. So in this example, we're looking at 2 different combinations of alternatives. In this one, we're looking at how long is the pandemic going to last and what's going to happen with the global economy. So on the horizontal axis, we're looking at it's either going to be never ending, or at the other extreme, it would be short. And on the vertical axis, we're looking at the global economy, ranging from one extreme of we're going to get by, or the other extreme, we have an economic collapse. And that gives us 4 scenarios. One, we adjust if this is the circumstance, or we have a full-on depression or a global recession. So that's what gives you the stories. These are the possibilities that emerge from looking at these 2 kinds of alternatives. Now you can have any set of alternatives that you want. Pick 2 things that you want to look at. They can be alternatives for your company. Like if you want to look at pricing, one alternative is we cut our prices as much as we can, or the other alternative is we raise them as high as we might. And on the other axis, you might look at what your competition does, or what happens with the ability of your clients to pay, and come up with those 4 scenarios. When you get the scenarios figured out, you have 4 potential outcomes. Then you develop a strategy for each one. You can consider which one you think is the most likely and have a plan for the best outcome, but also a plan for the worst. One thing this does is give you a degree of peace of mind, because you have some satisfaction that you've looked at the big picture, and you not only do you know what you want to do under the best of circumstances, you know what you're going to do if the bottom falls out of everything. It's a very powerful planning method. It's not that hard to do, but it gives you very powerful results. This is a simpler one, but this is for people who want to be sure they're covering all the bases in their own company. This is one that the Whale Hunters invented. That's my company. And we call it the post-pandemic opportunity grid. This is one that allows you to look at all the moving parts of your company over time. As we've thought of this pandemic being in phases, the first one being the acute phase, I think we're still in that now, where some of us, our companies are in survival mode. And I'm glad to hear that you're optimistic, but we're in a certain kind of survival mode because so many things are up in the air. We may be moving into a chronic mode where we're evolving, and I believe we're all hoping to get into an enduring mode, which is post-pandemic, where we hope that our businesses are going to be transformed into something new. I don't like the term the new normal, but I do like the term of what comes next, where we have transformed these businesses into what they're going to be. So down the left-hand column, we've tried to capture various components of your business that may or may not have to change. You can always add different components to this, but we're looking at what you do, the markets you're in, the products and services, the customers, your ops, your employees, your marketing and sales, your revenue, your investment, and then look at how they may have to change for each phase. It's a way to kind of get a lot of information down on the same page and have help from other people to figure that out. That's kind of just a one-page. It's not really a strategy, but it covers the basis of what you need to be thinking about so you're not missing anything. So for the person who's trying to deal with, how am I going to run this operation on 50% of my revenue? It will help you to get in front of you all of the things that could be modified to manage that lack of revenue. The last one I want to discuss with you is another Whale Hunters product, which we call factor analysis. This is another one that's really quite powerful. It involves bringing your team together and identifying via brainstorming, identify all the factors you can think of that are currently affecting your business. And then for each one, determine two things. Number one, determine whether it's a positive or negative factor. And number two, determine whether you have a high or low degree of control over it. And I'll give you some examples of how this works. First of all, here's a list of the kinds of factors that you might want to consider. Look at your services. Look at your competition, both your internal and external competition. Your pricing, deliverables, terms and conditions, your skill, your reputation, your customers, what they need, how they perceive you, the relationships you have, organizational culture, which is internal, your image, which is external, your policies and procedures, your customers' policies and procedures, decision processes, yours, your customers. Change, we're all dealing with huge amounts of change. Changes in people, changes in priorities, changes in your products or services, whether you've made changes or you need to make changes. Do people still need what you sell or what you do? Are you going to have to make changes? And then timing, market conditions, the economic climate. This is just a list of things you might be thinking about. The next slide is examples of what some key factors might be. If you're thinking about services, maybe you decide your service is not easy to buy. Maybe one example would be buyers complain about your contract. They don't like the contract terms. They don't like the decisions they have to make in terms of your contract, or the way you deliver your services could be easier. So that would be a factor. You have a key competitor who's losing ground, or somebody's going out of business. That's a factor. Your pricing is very competitive. That's a factor. Your customers are putting off their decisions. That's a factor. You have a complex sale. That's a factor. Your sales team can't reach customers face to face. That's a factor for almost everybody. Economic conditions are weak, to put it mildly. That's a factor. But these factors are different for everybody's business. There's not a list of factors that's affecting everybody. So identify the ones that are factors for you. And you may have a very long list. That's okay. Then you want to classify these factors, and we're going to turn them into strategies, classify them into the quadrants of positive, negative, and high control, low control. So you want to rate each factor. Is it a positive or a negative? And do you have high control or low control over it? So let me show you what a list looks like. I've made this kind of grid, and I've got this actual grid on the website for you to take a look at and copy. This grid shows on the left-hand side, it's got your situational factor, and on the right-hand side, every row has 4 little spaces where you can put an X. And those spaces recommend on the left-hand side, positive, negative, and on the right-hand side, high or low control. So in this example, competitive pricing, it's positive with high control. So it's going to go in this top right-hand corner, which represents leverage, okay? So for each one, decide if it's positive or negative, and if you have high or low control, and just go down through the whole list and make that kind of judgment and put an X where it's going to go in that grid. And then on the next slide, you'll see what you come up with at the end of that. You will have a summary of actions. Plus factors, minus factors, low control, high control. And every one of your factors will show up in one of those quarters of the quadrant, and it will tell you what to do about that factor. In this case, we're going to capitalize on the fact that you have a competitor losing ground. That should tell you the customers that that competitor had are kind of open territory for you. So begin to capitalize on those customers that are being lost. Your competitive pricing is one of the best things you have going for you, so you want to leverage that. Customers putting off their decisions and a weak economy, you have low control over those and they're negative. Put them aside. You probably can't do very much about that. Maybe you can help your customers make better decisions, and you can let your sales force use some time on that if you want to. But for the most part, things that are low control and negative, you're best to put them aside and work on other things. Things that are things that are negative but high control, you want to work to eliminate them. So issues with your contract, make it better, improve it, make that go away. And if your sales team can't work face-to-face, find ways that they can work virtually with their clients and get really good at it. So this process takes you through a series of steps and activities that you do as a team, and it leaves you with a strategy of what to do when you get through it. So where can you get information to build into this process? A lot of data is really out of date. Information is in short supply right now. The sources that you usually go to for data are, I am finding they're kind of still hopelessly out of date. Talk to your customers and suppliers, connect with your professional associations, tap into the collective wisdom and experience of your team and your advisor, and engage in a mastermind experience if you're not already in them. And the last thing I want to leave you with is attend the Big Growth Summit. This is an experience we put together for you and other company leaders. It's called the Big Growth Summit, where we're going beyond survival. There's a lot more information about it at biggrowthsummit.com. It's a virtual conference taking place August 25th and 26th. And we have special deal for people affiliated with the NASDAQ Center, and you'll get information about that in your email following this presentation. So thank you for your time, and I'm turning it over to Meredith.
Thanks, Barbara. That was amazing. And Ray, you as well. I love following people that my content fits so well with. I got to tell you that I was very excited to see that when the poll came in, that most of this group listening today is really optimistic, because that's what we're doing, is giving you new strategies and steps that are going to help you truly emerge successful. I also loved hearing that the thing that is keeping you up at night is sales, because we're going to talk a little bit about sales right now, but the Big Growth Summit and some tools and resources that I am going to give you are going to make sure that after you listen to all of this, you are going to be able to get a good night's sleep. Now, listen, whoever thought a virus could so drastically disrupt our marketplace? Social distancing has become the norm. Businesses have shut down, and it's got us all wondering when, if ever, things are going to return to normal. And what is normal even going to look like now? It's enough to make us believe that success isn't possible, that there's too many obstacles, there's too many challenges in the way to succeed in today's environment. But I got to tell you, nothing could be further than the truth, because there is a lot of opportunity in today's marketplace, and success is definitely possible. But you've got to understand the shifts, the trends that Ray was talking about. You've got to use the models that Barbara was speaking about, and you've got to implement the strategies that I'm going to talk about in the next few minutes that we have together. When I finish my session, you're going to have a set of strategies that help you thrive in an uncertain marketplace. Now, I got to tell you where I came up with these strategies and where I came up with this methodology. A couple of years ago, I became obsessed, and I mean obsessed, with the word uncertainty, how we think about it as entrepreneurs, how we react to it, and how we deal with it. And let me tell you, in general, we do not like the word. We do everything we can to avoid uncertainty. And I know this because I would go into business owners, people that I was consulting and coaching with, and I would ask the question, how's business? Now you have to remember, this is 2018, 2019. If you can take a breath and remember how good things were back then. But unequivocally, this is the response I would get. Business is good. Business is great. In fact, we are probably poised for our best year on record. But this uncertainty. As if uncertainty was always this thing we were waiting for to just drop out of the sky, stop us dead in our tracks, and prevent our businesses from growing. It was the dreaded thing that we were sure was going to make it impossible to be successful. And that just got me thinking, what if we flipped the script on that? What if we started to think about uncertainty as a positive? What if uncertainty wasn't an obstacle, but it was actually an opportunity? And what if uncertainty was the very thing that we needed to show up if our businesses were really ever going to go to another level? And that put me on a mission to research companies and organizations that maybe had done that, believed that, actually saw uncertainty as strategic advantage. And I identified 9 companies, 9 businesses that have been around since the late 1700s, early 1800s, that are still thriving in business today. So take a breath, because I want you to think about that. What that means is they've not only survived economic downturn, economic depression, world wars, but they have come through a pandemic, shining and thriving today. And I wanted to know why. What were they doing that was so unique? And what were they doing that was so different? And what I discovered was a 9-step methodology for thriving in uncertainty. 9 steps that ensure you have the strategic information you need to not only emerge successful from this crisis, but succeed no matter what this marketplace does. Now, I only got about 10 more minutes with you today, so we don't have time to get through all 9. But I'm going to give you my top 3, the top 3 strategies that you can implement immediately that I guarantee if you put them into place, they're going to bring you return on investment. They're going to also give you peace of mind that you can emerge successful from this crisis. Now, before we jump into those strategies, I need to share a story. And I think it's a story that you are going to relate to. It's my story. It's my story of how this pandemic has impacted me. And I think it's going to be very relevant for you too, because I have a hunch it's your story too. As this year kicked off, do we all remember bringing in the new year, how excited we were? I mean, we not only thought this was going to be a great year, we thought this was going to be an amazing decade. I myself had my best first quarter of my entire career until March 9th. March 9th is a day that will live for me, probably in infamy, because it was the day that my entire revenue disappeared for the year. One by one, I lost job after job after job. See, I make my living as a keynote speaker. And what that means is I get on planes, I travel around the world, I get on stages, and I engage with thousands of people. So not only was my revenue gone, but my entire business model by the end of the week had become completely irrelevant. It wasn't usable anymore. And probably like many of you, the very first thing I did was panicked. I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to start selling things on eBay. I'm probably going to have to deliver pizzas. I don't know what I'm going to do for a living. Then I got angry. This wasn't fair. It wasn't right. How could this happen to me? And then finally, I went into action mode. Now, I wasn't sure what I was going to do or how I was going to do it, but I knew I had to take action. Well, luckily for me, I had been researching this methodology and researching this book about how to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. And with nowhere left to turn, I decided to drink my own Kool-Aid, so to speak, and put these strategies into place into my own business. And in 6 short weeks, I not only turned my business around, but I sit here headed into the month 6 of this pandemic. And 2020 is probably going to be a better year for me than 2019. So yeah, if you follow the trends that Ray told you about, if you use the models that Barbara showed you, this isn't only going to be a good year, but you can actually turn this crisis into your strategic advantage. All right. I've kept you waiting long enough. I'm going to dive into the 3 strategies that you can use immediately. Now, you can take some notes, but don't worry about it, because when I'm finished, I'm going to give you a resource that has all 9 strategies available in video form, as well as some other resources to help you emerge successful. So just stay present, jump in, and let's learn together how to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. All right, drum roll, please. Strategy number 1. If you want to emerge successful from a crisis, if you want to thrive in the age of uncertainty, you have to be clear on where you're going and clear on where you're headed. Now, a lot of people call this a vision. I call it a positive point. You need to know where your business is headed and what you want it to look like after this pandemic was over. A few years ago, there was a great story about a group of Boy Scouts who were headed on a whitewater rafting trip in Northern California. Now, they had made this reservation a year earlier, and they were so excited about this trip. But as luck would have it, just a few short weeks before it was time for them to head down the river, Northern California had torrential downpours. So much rain that it moved the Class 3 rapids to Class 5 and made the river really unrunnable. But as boys will be boys, they begged, they screamed, they cried to still be allowed to go. So much so until their scout leader and the guide finally gave in. Now, the guide gave in on one condition. He said, boys, you can still go down that river as long as you sit through a 3-hour safety talk. Now, most safety talks are 30 minutes. But this guide wanted 3 hours to go over every single danger point with these boys, all the rocks they would hit, all the down trees, all the high water. But as much time as he gave to the obstacles, he spent twice as much time focused on what he called the positive point, the point where the raft needed to end up. He said, boys, I want you to understand that as we go down this river, I will always show you the obstacles, but I will immediately point to the positive place where the raft is headed. Because if I make you aware of the obstacles, you'll avoid them. But if I focus on the positive point, the raft will wind up there. If I don't make you aware of the positive point, you'll head straight into the rock or straight into the high water. Our businesses are exactly the same way. Look, we got plenty of obstacles and plenty of challenges, plenty of reasons we can't succeed in today's marketplace. And we need to be aware of them. I mean, Barbara just gave you a great tool to do that. But you need to be focused on where you are headed. You need to be clear. Now, probably nobody knows exactly what their business is going to look like when this pandemic is over. Nobody has that crystal ball. But you do know you want to be successful. You do know you still want to be standing. You still know you want to have a strong team around you, amazing clients. You need to get that visual, look at it every morning, visit it again in the middle of the day, and close your day out with that, because that's what you need to be focused on. Barbara told you what you focused on in life expands, and it's true. And if you can clearly articulate your positive point, your raft is going to move past the obstacles and go on a beautiful trip downstream. Now, that's our first strategy, to focus on the positive point. But I don't mean to belittle the obstacles and the challenges, because it is going to be a rocky road to get there. I mean, there is so much happening in today's marketplace, and change, it is happening like that. But change is a funny thing. We think that we're good at change if we react to it, if we change when we have to. But the truth about change, if you want to thrive in an uncertain marketplace, is you need to be one step ahead of the change. I call that conditioning yourself for change. And that is strategy number 2. Change is like a muscle. And the more you work it, the more you condition it, the more you talk about it, the stronger and more resilient you will be to change. See, the truth about change is if you see it coming, it can be your greatest opportunity. If you ignore it, put your head in the sand, change will bury you. Now, Barbara gave you some great tools to help you navigate change, and I'm going to give you one more. It's called a skeptic. Now, this tool is really pretty easy, and I ask my clients to use this tool every 30 days in their business. All I want you to do is to write these words down: society, competition, economics, politics, technology, industry, your customers. If you write those words down, I want you to take 30 minutes every single month, gather your team. If you work by yourself, get a couple of your peers, and just talk about the changes that you see happening outside of your business. Because if you talk about the changes that you see happening outside of your business, a couple of things are going to happen. You're going to get comfortable with change. You're going to get used to it. You're going to expect that it's going to show up. But more importantly than that, you're going to see change happening before you have to change. That's where the magic happens, when you can actually predict your future and start creating it now. There is more change happening outside of your business than happening inside of your business. So you got to get your head out of your business, at least on a monthly basis, and think about the changes coming. You need to be one step ahead of the changes happening in the marketplace. All right. We're cooking with gas. We have 2 of the 3. We know that we need to begin with that positive point, that what we focus on every single day expands. We've got to be aware of the obstacles, but we got to be focused on where our business is headed. We got to get that vision in our mind. We got to condition ourselves for change. We got to build our change muscle and actually start to see change coming. Now, this last and final strategy, I got to admit, is one of my favorites, partly because it speaks directly to sales. And the other is because businesses who truly thrive in an uncertain marketplace, they use this strategy to really steady and secure their business, no matter how strong the tides of change come. You know, whenever we get into crisis mode, we start to panic about finding business and finding customers. And we just start grabbing for business anywhere. And most of us start to focus on trying to find new customers. And that's actually the antithesis of what you ought to do. Instead of focusing on finding new business, you need to back up and focus on the business and the customers that you have. We call strategy number 3, securing your base. You want to focus on your existing customers for a number of reasons. Number 1 is if you focus on your existing customers, they'll stay loyal to you. Listen, if your customers are not hearing from you right now, they don't know that you're okay. They don't know what you have to offer, and they may take their business somewhere else. They're already bought into you. They already believe in you. I want you to pick up the phone. I want you to give them a call, and I just want you to check in with people. I'm personally telling my clients, I want you to go back to people who have done business with you for the last 3 to 4 years. Because number 1, they're going to be so loyal to you because you checked in with them. But number 2, and more importantly, they're going to start to tell you their challenges, their opportunities, the biggest things that they're worried about, what's keeping them up at night. And that's going to be the biggest gift you are going to get in this crisis, because they are going to give you the language of exactly how you need to redefine the products and services you sell so they are more relevant in today's marketplace. See, most of us are selling the same things that we sold before this pandemic, but we can't sell them the exact same way. Our customers' problems, challenges, their needs have changed. And we can't possibly know what those are until we speak to them. You know, one of the businesses that I interviewed for this book is Procter & Gamble. Now, Procter & Gamble started in the early 1800s, and interestingly enough, they started from 2 brother-in-laws who married sisters. One made soap and one made candles. And the father-in-law to be said, boys, why don't you quit competing with one another and quit competing for the wax you need and go into business with one another. And lo and behold, Procter & Gamble was born. One of their founding values was to listen to their customers. And you can see it all through their history. Every product they have developed, they developed based on keeping an ear to their customer. It's why they've been so successful. They were one of the first businesses to have the 800 line. Every time depression or economic shift has happened, they've gone to their customers and said, what do you need? They've been first to market with the most relevant products and services. So secure your base. Focus on your existing customers and use the language they give you to then go out and find new business. Sales today is about being relevant. People will buy from you if you're solving their problem, but don't assume you know their problem. Ask them, because they'll give you the language. So there you've got it. Those are the steps. Those are the strategies. Those are 3 things to introduce you to how to thrive in an uncertain marketplace. I want you to begin by finding that positive point. Condition yourself for change. And last but not least, focus your sales efforts inside. Get truly relevant, and your business will grow from the inside out. Listen, I know we can make a list of all the reasons you can succeed in today's marketplace and all the reasons you can't. And I have been doing this long enough to know that the reasons you can't succeed will always be longer than the reasons that you can. But the difference between people who succeed in good times and bad It isn't money, it isn't resources, it isn't luck, it isn't education. It's what they choose to focus their time and their energy on. And I've been lucky enough here to be paired up with Ray and with Barbara, and they have given you some unbelievable things to really keep yourself focused. I hope that my strategies have been helpful. You can find out more about how to thrive in an uncertain marketplace at the Big Growth Summit, because I'm going to dive deep into those things, as well as you can go to my website, which is valuespeaker.com. And at the top of that, you'll see a purple bar that says Emerge Successful. Just click there and it's full of tools and resources free of charge to help you emerge successful. All right, Maria, I'll turn it back over to you.
Oh my goodness, what an incredible overview and at times a deep dive into the trends that we're facing. Thank you all. We have some incredible questions coming up. And for all of you still with us, please share your questions either in the chat or in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. And if you feel brave enough, please raise your hand. We would actually love to take your question live. So I think we're ready to dive in. We have a question from Hamid. What advice for a founder of a commercial real estate company would you have for folks who are in commercial real estate as a broker, an investor, or a banker? What advice might you give?
Well, I'll take a stab at that one. I think the number one thing, well, two things. First of all, I think that Ray's idea of trends has a lot to do with real estate. What I hear about the real estate market right now is that it's going pretty well. The idea of talking to prospects is very, very important. Talk to your past customers about how they're thinking about the market, and talk to your prospects about not just what they're looking for, but why they're thinking about making changes now. I think the more you can learn firsthand from the market that surrounds you, that will be the best sense you can get, because I don't think we have enough trend information just yet that would help you in any particular place that I would urge you to research. So I would say talking to people who are in the market or who are thinking about going into the market, about what their thinking is, about why they're moving, would be my immediate best advice.
I would add too that I'd be looking for ways to differentiate myself in the marketplace. Real estate, you saw from the information that Ray gave you. I mean, I think Barbara is spot on. I mean, real estate is doing really well. Commercial's a little bit more challenged because you have certainly whether people are going to be in big office buildings and things like that. There's a lot of speculation out there as to what's going to happen. So I'd be looking for ways to differentiate myself in the commercial real estate market. What makes you different? Why should I deal with you over other commercial real estate agents? And I think there's a lot of opportunity with that right now, because, you know, a commercial agent is typically known just to want to sell a building or sell a property. How are you really going to help your customers get return on investment? How are you going to make sure that their investment is going to be safe, even when this virus is over and something else, pops up? How are you going to help them stay away from or keep them informed of the new things, maybe insurance costs that are increasing with the fact that, you know, if they're in downtown areas and prone to riots and, you know, things like that. So there's a lot of things where you can go deeper and truly differentiate yourself and make yourself more of a strategic and trusted advisor rather than just a commercial real estate agent.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In my own experience as an entrepreneur, there has been a small set of outsiders, part of my team, as Barbara talked about, that I really, really deeply trusted. And those are people who, among other things, have advised me to say no when doing that would make them less money or make them no money. And, the current situation with commercial real estate, office space and retail are in real trouble. And so you might just say, run to other sectors. But of course, everybody's doing that. But as Meredith and Barbara talked about, if you can be one of those people who, is willing to give your clients the advice they need and demonstrate to them credibly that you're not just out to sign a contract and get a commission, then the benefits that will pay off are going to be enormous. I've referred lots of people to those small number of trusted advisors that really, really seem to have my best interest at heart.
Thank you all. We have another question from an anonymous attendee directed to Meredith, but I'm certain that Barbara and Ray would be able to chime in here as well. What is your recommendation if your product or service is a single sale to your previous customers and they don't necessarily need to buy it again?
Yeah, still have the phone call with them and still have the interview, even if it's a single sale. Number one is we want to let everybody know that we ever did business with, that we're healthy, we're strong, and we're growing. And so that call for me for single sale, I have a couple of clients that are single sale, is still to reach out and still to have that conversation. And it would just be like, I might call Ray and I might say, Ray, I've loved doing business with you. I'm really trying to look how to navigate this uncertain marketplace. I just kind of want to talk to you about what's going on in your business. Now, number one, I've signaled to Ray that I'm growing, that I'm learning. So Ray's going to tell all his friends. The other is you're going to need to morph and change and transform in today's marketplace. And Ray may just tell you something that tips you off to your next big idea or your next product or service. I know that since this pandemic has started, I have created more products and services that I wasn't selling before this pandemic, simply from conversations of listening to the pain points of my customers. So go to the people who will be open and honest with you and just listen with a really open mind. I guarantee you are going to get invaluable information and you're going to get advocates to help you grow your business. It is a win-win.
Thank you, Meredith. Ray or Barbara, did you want to chime in on this question or should we move to the next?
Well, I would just say briefly that this is very consistent with what Meredith said. Whenever you have an opportunity to engage with your customers and you're not asking for anything from them other than, their feedback on how it's going, you're not trying to make a sale, you're not trying to, in that moment, get a referral. If you have occasion, of course, there are lots of occasions where you do want something, you want them to buy something or whatever, but if you have occasions where you can engage with your customers and you're not asking them for anything, that again adds an enormous amount of credibility. There's an anecdote about when Bill Gates and Warren Buffett first met, when the first times that they met, neither of them asked each other for anything. And they both came away feeling, comfortable with that. Of course, they have built an enormously large and valuable not-for-profit enterprise together since then.
Thank you so much. So we have a question actually in our pre-registration. How might I balance empathy and innovation at this moment within my business?
I actually, it's interesting you say that. It's not obvious to me that empathy and innovation are things that need to be balanced. I mean, I guess I might need to think about that a little more, understand a little more. But They say sometimes that necessity is the mother of invention, but I think that if you empathize, meaning understand what your customers' needs are, those feel to me as though the empathy is the source, is the wellspring, as Meredith talked about, of innovation, where she talked about products and services that she created that are based quite directly on an understanding of the needs in the marketplace as reflected in specific individuals' talks.
One possibility that occurs to me is maybe it's empathy for people who are uncomfortable with the need to innovate or the need to change. You have empathy for people on your team who are really having a hard time dealing with what's going on and clinging to the ways of the past. That's always difficult to do. And so I can see under that circumstance, that would feel like a balancing act. And I think the only way to do that is to be kind but firm. You can't get through this clinging to the ways of the past. And even if you weren't being prompted by today's circumstance, you always have a need to innovate And there are always people who find that harder than others. So I think have a degree of empathy, but don't let the empathy hold you back from the essential innovation.
I just want to add that I think that for as far as sometimes I think that empathy leads to innovation. If I have empathy for my clients, from seeking to understand them is where I find the products or services that I need to develop and I need to create. So within my team, I find that empathy allows me to build trust. But when I explain why, it opens the door for innovation, meaning that I have empathy with the fact that, you know, it's tough. I mean, nobody wants to change. We definitely have people that wish this could all just go away and we could go back to pre-COVID. So I want to empathize first to get trust. But when I explain why, that we still want to be here, we want to have a business, I want to give you a paycheck, that builds the bridge to innovation. And that bridge helps them walk over to begin to make the changes. I think when we lead as entrepreneurs, the most important question we can ever answer is why. Why are we asking people to do that? But if we empathize first, it builds the connection of trust and they're most likely to follow you.
I totally agree with that. I just add one more thing to that. That's one reason I think that collaborative planning is so important. Yeah. Because if people are part of the decision-making, part of coming up with the innovation and the change, they are much more likely to participate enthusiastically in making it happen.
Thank you all. Amazing. Okay, we have a very general yet poignant question. I know that's always a question from within our community. What advice would you give to an early stage entrepreneur or founder who is seeking funding from venture capitalists or who's selling to a bank?
I'm an angel investor, so I'll take a crack at that. Number one is make sure that you want venture capital or you want angel capital. It's different than going to a bank. Venture capitalists and angel capitalists, we just want return on investment. If you want a lifestyle business, if you want to hold on to it, a bank is a better, path for you. So if you want to be in front of venture capitalists or angel capitalists, focus on when they're going to get their return on investment, because quite frankly, that's all they care about in the meeting. How are you going to make sure that what they're investing is going to deliver to them 6 times plus in a matter of, the deadline that they've given you? Lead with that, because they can't hear anything else you're saying until you say that. If you're going the path of a bank, that's easy. I used to be a banker. Don't quit your day job. It's all about cash flow. So as long as you can cash flow any money that you're borrowing from me, I'll give it to you. So I always used to tell people who were starting a business, don't quit your day job. Make sure that you can pay the loan with a cash flow that is not business dependent, because your business is going to take 3 to 5 years to make any money. Now that's good for you too, because if you have cash flow coming from somewhere else, it takes the pressure off having to get cash pumping out of your business. And starting a business and expecting it to make money, that's too much pressure. So do something else to get the cash flowing through. If you don't want to sell the business, go to a bank. If you're looking to sell the business, focus on return on investment and go to the venture and angel capitalists. I wish we were more empathetic than that, but the truth is we just want to get our money back and make money on it.
I think that's good advice. I too have served as an angel investor, and I've also raised for my businesses over $20 million. And the thing I would add to that is, particularly in this environment, regardless of the source you're going to seek, whether it's debt or equity financing, I think that you need to demonstrate a plan for minimizing burn over the next, say, 6 to 12 months. Making sure that you have adequate cash flow to take off is always important. But right now, there have been periods of time within the venture community where everything's a land grab or an eyeball grab. Now is probably not, for most sectors, one of those times. Now is a time when your idea needs not only to be good and that they're going to get that return on investment, but you have to survive. You have to have enough cash to survive until that 3 to 5 years that Meredith talked about comes to fruition.
Thank you all so much. I think we may have time for one more question. To what extent do you think business practices are shifting to capture things such as inclusion in supply chains, equity, and/or globalization? Any thoughts on that?
I think inclusion is becoming more important all the time. I think all of the socially conscious activities that a company gets involved in are important to its consumers and to the world at large. So I think, we can see what's going on in society today. A lot of it is driven by social justice concerns, and I think those things are not going away. I think consumers are interested in philanthropy. I think they're interested in sustainability. I think they're interested in all kinds of causes that at one time or another were not paramount in how people did business, but they're much more important today. So I think you should pay very close attention to that in your business.
We work it into the strategic planning model, and we have been doing it for the last few years. I mean, I think that there's, definitely the moral part of it, but a lot of times as business goes, it's just good business. I mean, if you want to grow your organization, you better look like the people you're trying to attract. And if you look outside your walls, the customer landscape is changing, whether it means it's younger, whether it means it's more diverse, whether it means it's more open-minded. And you can't possibly attract diverse cultures unless your supply chains and your team look diverse. So I know that when we're building strategic plans, certainly, we want to do the right thing. The second piece is, though, we're doing it as it's good business, right? If we want to attract more women, if we want to attract more minorities, we need those people sitting at the table telling us how to do it and leading people on how to do it, correctly. So I think that it is, I think that it enters as the right thing to do, but it is a major stick because it is where business is going. I mean, our landscape is changing, and if you want to grow, you better look like the people you're trying to attract.
I think authenticity is really important. I think that, as Barbara said, a lot of customers want to know and see that you are thinking about this sort of thing, but it's important that you believe and that your people believe, and you can sort of demonstrate what you say. So as an example, one of my businesses, the particular dimension on which we're best really from a diversity standpoint was we happen to have a lot of people, a lot of percentage of our employees from the LGBTQ community. And so that was a really natural basis on which to showcase a particular dimension of diversity, and it made our people feel good, and a lot of our customers cared about it. And but it was very natural, and it was nothing that we ever felt like we had to convince anyone. We just had to give our people a platform for being themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you all so much. So I know that we're at time currently. For all of you still with us here, please let us know what you have learned and how you felt about this incredible town hall. The survey link is in the chat. We would love to hear from you, and I know that these three incredible speakers would also love to hear your feedback as well. From all of us at NASDAQ Entrepreneurial Center, and on behalf of everyone in attendance today, I want to sincerely thank all three of you, Ray, Barbara, and Meredith. This has been an incredible oversight and in-depth expertise that you have shared. We have learned so much during the course of this hour plus with you. Do you have any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to leave with the group today?
Thank you all for coming, and we do invite you to attend the Big Growth Summit on August 25th and 26th. We'll all be speaking along with 20 more very, very fine speakers and panelists who will all be talking about things dear to the heart of entrepreneurs.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Barbara. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you at additional events. We have a few upcoming this week and next week, including Barbara, who is with us today. She will be with us next Tuesday for B2B sales tips and tactics. Please join us for that, and look out for the resource email that will follow this event. We will have links to everything mentioned today, Meredith's website, the Big Growth Summit website, and including the discount code if you're interested in attending. Thank you all again, and we look forward to having you with us soon. Bye now.
Thank you.
Bye,
Bye.
thanks.
Thank you.